without us knowing it. Although he is against someone else we don't know, so I guess that's kind of a meaningless statement.
It's a little difficult to deal with, isn't it? Because Dystar may very well be quite active in European Cups, but Ike doesn't play in all that many of them, and those he does play in, he doesn't have a huge amount of results in. His biggest result was in a Norwegian-only LAN. So it's hard to really know just how good Ike actually is, or indeed what Dystar's performance will actually be against Protoss. Historically, he's been pretty good, but that was a long time ago, and things do change rather rapidly, particularly lately. It seems that a lot of Terrans are struggling with Protoss, at least outside of Pro League at any rate, where Protoss are actually getting their asses handed to them at the moment.
I am just absolutely shocked by the Pro League statistics. I genuinely thought, like, a biased balance winding, it's hard to put that completely aside, but it genuinely felt like Protoss was by far the strongest race in the current meta game. I haven't watched enough of their Pro League games, but I know how badly they're doing, and I'm very surprised.
Let me just put it this way. My fantasy Pro League team is called Protoss Balance, and had 4 Protoss in it that were mostly CJ Enters, so I think you can imagine how badly I'm currently doing.
We're actually on a very similar mindset there, because when I did the votes for the OGaming end-of-year thing, I actually put my team of the year as CJ, because even though they hadn't been doing very well in like the team leagues, I really felt like their individual players were some of the best, and they're great at grooming talent. And now they're like 1-3 in Pro League or something.
Yeah. Well, so at least they're not doing as badly as Prime, so that's a plus.
There is that.
It was just wonderful. If you wanted to pick Prime as your team for Fantasy Pro League, it cost you 0 points to do it, which was quite handy. So, that was a cheap one. Oh my. Well, whatever the case, we currently have an expansion on the way up for Dystar. He's going to follow this up with 2 barracks relatively quickly. So
2 barracks, and he's also starting out with a reactor to get double Marines out very quickly. So he's going pretty heavy Bioforce.
Yep.
Which is the less standard of all of the openings during Hadoop. Reaper Expand, obviously one of the most common, but often going straight into Quick Factory and Starport.
Yes.
Get Widow Mines going, get drops going, get harassment going. And if nothing else, getting a Tech Lab for a quick stim timing or something like that. There goes the Tech Lab on the second barracks, but still 3 barracks production that early with a lot of Marines off the reactor.
Yeah.
That could lead to, obviously, a slightly delayed, but very, very powerful. It'd be interesting to see if he goes for a combat shield here to make up, because he's going to have a lot of Marines, so combat shield makes a very big difference.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to do a very quick stim timing or anything like that, but he's getting 2 Tech Labs, so it'll probably be both upgrades and just a later, very heavy timing.
I'm a little bit worried for Ike here, going straight 1 gate Robo after the Nexus, and then the Forge as well. Still no sign of any kind of other production. This could end up actually being really nasty for him if he ends up with a ton of stuff on his front door. Admittedly, in Wings of Liberty, this would have been a much bigger deal, but with the Mothership Core and the Photon Overcharge, maybe not so much. Although, even with enough units, you can still, you can still kill the Nexus. You can just barrel down on the thing, even with combat shields. So, I don't know. It's hard to say whether or not any kind of aggression would really work here.
Yeah, I don't think Ike has crossed the point of no return yet. He's still completely capable of holding it off, especially because it is looking like it's going to be more of a delayed attack because his stim does start later. He is going for more unit-heavy attack.
Yeah.
So depending on what Ike does from here, if he adds gateways, if he produces the right units out of his robo, he will be able to hold it off. It's not like it's going to be an attack that's coming in a minute or two when he's going to have 3 stalkers and maybe an immortal or anything like that. And he is going for a Robo Bay. So this is all going to come down to Dystar's attack timing. He's now getting a Combat Shield, so he's definitely looking to attack right as Stim and Combat Shield finish. He has those lined up nicely. They should finish around the same time. And that's going to be, I don't know, the first Colossus is going to be like just finishing then, I think. So this is going to be a pretty close timing on both sides.
I still think Ike's got super greedy with his tech. I mean, he put down the Robo Bay before the second gateway, and he puts down a Twilight Council as well. He's throwing down every possible tech option in the book here on no units. Now Ike is going to, with the Observer, spot, oh dear, that's a lot of barracks and you just started your factory. Oh dear, those tech labs are certainly running things, and oh god, look at that army. So he immediately brings in a sentry just to make sure that they can't waltz up the ramp there. But he has 2 Stalkers, a Sentry, and a Mothership Core. And the extra gateways aren't even done yet. The first Colossus is on its way. It's not going to be out before Dystar's attack hits.
No, he might be able to buy time with his Nexus Overcharge thing. But he has 4 units against so much stuff. And this is not a normal Terran stim timing. This
No.
is a 3 barracks reactor first. I have a lot of units with both stim and combat shield timing.
Yep.
And he might not even have to wait for the Nexus cannon to dissipate. He might be able to just charge in there and focus it down. He has so much firepower.
And I think that's kind of what he should do.
Colossus out, at least.
Yeah, the Colossus is done. It does not have the extra range. Dystar would certainly want to move back. He's actually trying to focus it down as best he can here, but it turns out 4 units is, at the moment, enough because of this photon overcharge here. Dystar's continuing to try and focus this down, but apparently you don't need units as Protoss anymore.
That was just absolutely clutch timing on the Colossus. I don't know if he had that timed out, if this is a build Dystar does a lot, or a build that's really common amongst Terran in Europe. And Ike knew exactly what was going on, and he had that timed out perfectly, or he just got really, really lucky. But that Colossus getting out absolutely
just
saved
the
him.
right time.
He was just completely dead if that had not happened.
Absolutely
As
true.
is back at home, Dystar just now starting up his first medevac production, and he absolutely has to start Vikings up right now because there's already 2 Colossus out, which means he's going to be significantly lacking in terms of the medevacs. This is the counter side to that big investment Dystar made early in that big unit timing. That looked like a really scary timing. It seemed like it might have given him a free win, but it costs a lot to make that kind of investment into an army, and he's significantly lacking in terms of tech. And he's just starting his first upgrade now. So he's still at 0-0, whereas Ike already has +1 armor.
Well, it looks like the tech greed of Ike is very much paid off at this point. So unless a bad engagement happens, there is a pretty large Marauder force here from Dystar, so it is certainly possible that those Colossus would be in a bad position and get picked off. And they're a little bit close to the front here, but Dystar does not want to engage, so especially not with the force fields there. That was a bit too much of a risk. So he loses a Marauder, and that is then pushed back. And is going to have to wait to get some Vikings up. He only has 2 medevacs, so I have to wonder. Ike's already up to 3 Colossus, going up to 4 and Blink.
He has Thermal Lance as well now, so there's absolutely no way he's going to get attacked anytime soon. And I think he actually just has enough of an advantage that he can go Blink Stalker Colossus, and Dystar's not going to be able to have enough medevacs to keep himself alive, and Vikings to kill the Colossus amongst all the Blink Stalkers. It was just such a good early game for Ike. He was very, very greedy, and Dystar was quite aggressive, and Ike managed to survive, which of course leads to a very, very big mid-game advantage. Once he gets the 4th Colossus, I think he's just going to be able to attack, move, and win if he wants to.
Yeah, I think so.
Like he wants to. He's already starting to posture out on the map.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't he? Even if Vikings start to come into production now, 4 Vikings does not kill 4 Colossus, not quick enough. That entire army dies before that. Unless, of course, we see some really poor force field placement like we just saw from Ike. 3 force fields going down, killing nothing but a single Marauder, which was not that great. And he does only have 2 sentries with him with low energy, so the risk is, I suppose, he gets Marauder flanked and gets his Colossus taken out quickly. The Marauder force is pretty heavy. There's been 3 produced at a time. He's about to go up to 15 Marauders with +1, which will definitely help against a Stalker Colossus heavy composition like this. So Ike's still playing with fire a little bit, but that is still 4 Colossus, and we should never underestimate that.
He's also getting charged a lot and continuing to upgrade, so he will have a fallback. He's continuing to warp in Stalkers. You're right, that is a very Marauder-heavy army. He should be considering more zealots in his composition. But I think he just has enough firepower that he can attack and move through it. He's not bringing his Mothership Corps along. He does lack force fields. It would be really, really nice to have the Mothership Corps with that army, have the double time stops available to help out in the positioning battle. Not really sure why he's not bringing that along. That would help his army out significantly. I think with time stops, there's absolutely no way Dystar can engage. Even without it, it's going to be really, really tough.
He might be a bit scared of drops. I mean, that's a possibility, especially with a fairly small, reasonably sort of front-facing army there from the Protoss player. It is possible that drops would come in to do a little bit of damage, but...
Yeah, he does have absolutely nothing back at home.
Yes.
So that's a reasonable fear to have.
Yeah. More tech coming out because Ike apparently doesn't have enough of that. Templar Archives being added on top of that, so he can add in Storm, he can add in Archons if he so desires. The Colossus count is currently at 5. Viking count's at 12 now, though, so... If there was an opportunity, I feel, for Ike to attack, it has long since passed, and he'll now just try and be defensive.
Looks like he doesn't want to take any risks. He's just... Dystar's actually the one choosing to attack here, and I'm not sure about that.
Well, he can kill an awful lot of Colossus. I mean, he had enough Vikings there, at least on the first couple of waves, to one-shot the Colossus. Another one's going to go down here, but Dystar is going to lose an awful lot making this happen. He might be able to get to those other Colossus, but it doesn't look like it. With a very nice time warp in the middle of that army, we're going to see a Protoss clean up very nicely here, and Dystar's army supply plummets. And Ike's thinking, you know what, I might go for you now. All of the Vikings are dead. There's 4 Vikings in production here, but... What could absolutely cripple the Terran player here is a switch to Templar.
If he doesn't attack now, he's the most patient Protoss player I've ever seen. He just wiped an army and has 3 Colossus left, plus like 7 Gateway production. He absolutely should just attack move. There's no way he can lose. That wasn't the best engagement by Ike. He didn't really control his Colossus at all. He just kind of attack moved everything with some decent spell placement. But that early game advantage just easily carrying him through so much stuff.
Evidently.
He's adding in Archons, putting down a forward pylon, so I would imagine he's going to be going in for the kill here soon.
Yeah.
But behind it, also playing very smart, establishing a 4th base. He has all the techs going. He has double forge running as well for upgrades, so he has plenty to fall back on, even if he doesn't manage to kill Dystar here. And Dystar, not a whole lot of stuff to work with.
No. Ghost Academy is on the way. Archons have now been added on into the mix, and we might even see Storm a little bit later on. But +2/+2 with a ball like that is going to be very difficult for the Terran player to stop, especially with a reduced army. So I don't think this is going to be working out too well for Dystar. Ike is now moving into position and will be attacking. And I don't know if Dystar's going to be able to hold that. That is a lot of Protoss stuff. He's added in a lot more Zealots into the composition, which is going to handily shut down these 18 Marauders to 23 Marines. That's a very heavy Marauder ratio, which is nice against Storm. You can kind of man-mode your way through it, but against this many Colossus and that many Charging Zealots with those upgrades, that becomes a little bit dicier. Maybe Elky just waits for 3-3 and then goes and adds Storm into the comp, but I would say that Dystar's in a rough spot right now.
Actually, adding cannons out in the center of the map, just being very, very careful. Ike is being very careful, and in this case, is actually good for him because he almost has a 3-3 upgrades, and Dystar has actually stopped upgrading. He went for that 1-1 timing and never even started 2-2, never bothered.
Yeah.
So time is actually on Ike's side, but he has a big enough advantage. He could just kind of attack and win. And Dystar, kind of feeling the sense of urgency, just pulls SCVs and going for one last engagement.
Indeed, and Ike looks like he is going to absolutely murder this Terran force. Storm coming down to finish it off. That is not even close. Dystar just got Protossed in a really big way, and Ike's now just going to go for the kill. There's the GG, and, well, that was an impressive performance there from the up-and-comer.
Yeah, really, really nice build from him. I am very curious how much of that was planned and how much of that was luck, but the timing's just worked out absolutely perfectly for him. To be fair, Dystar's build, there's a reason you don't see it too much. Putting that much into early aggression against the Protoss when they have force fields, time stop, planetary nexus. I don't know, it's just, that's not a good gamble to take. And from that lead, Ike, I mean, he went quick Colossus. He had a quick Forge going. He put up like 4 gateways and Twilight Council as well. He was just investing in so many things while Dystar was doing nothing but making 3 barracks tier 1. And when that attack just does nothing like that, I don't know, it's so hard to come back from that. But props to Ike, he played it out absolutely perfectly, but it was really on the backbone of that build order advantage he had.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. It worked out well for him. It was an incredibly greedy build tech-wise. Going all the way up to Colossus on a single gate is usually not something you really see.
A single gate and 2 stalkers. It's not even like he was building up sentries to have force field or anything. It was actually 2 stalkers and 3 techs and a bunch of gateways and an upgrade.
Pretty much, yeah. And hell, I suppose if you hold from that position, you get in such a ridiculous spot. I mean, we're bearing in mind that Colossus were out before the starport even started building. Mm-hmm. So that was not really going to go so well for the Terran player. But you're right, it was definitely well timed out. And I do wonder if they run into each other from time to time and whether or not this is a build that's actually happening a little bit more on Europe and this is maybe a bit of a meta switch. You know, we hear complaints from Terran players about the state of Terran versus Protoss right now. Maybe there is an adaptation that says, okay, well, there is a way to crack that planetary nexus, and this is what you need to do in order to make that happen. And perhaps it is, you know, a bit of a counter-meta from the Protoss. I don't know. It's hard to say. Especially in Europe, it's actually not a scene that over the last couple of months I've really been able to keep too much track on. So it could very well be absolutely anything. But what can I say? Ike pulled that one out quite nicely. And that then leaves us on match point here.
Which puts him against Mana, I believe, right?
It does, yes. Very much so. So a bit of a PvP, which definitely not Mana's strongest matchup. So Ike could actually take this for Norway, which I think would be, again, a bit of an upset for a lot of people.
Oh, that definitely would be. I was not expecting that at all. And Ike, I don't really feel like he was even tested that last match. he won on the back of his build order, but everything else was absolutely clean. Like, the only flaw in that game from him that I saw was the fact that he was a bit greedy. His engagement wasn't perfect, but I don't know, nothing ever looked like there was any possible way he could lose. So it's kind of hard to tell from a game like that how good he was, but he certainly was not bad at all. And Mana has been kind of unproven in the last few months. He's been on a bit of a downswing. So I don't know, it's kind of looking good for the underdog here.
I certainly think so. Let's see. Even if Ike goes down, that still leaves Snoot, which is, yeah, it's pretty good. I've got to say, Snoot's ZVP has not been looking that great lately, so it may very well not go well for him, but regardless, it does give a nice buffer to Norway, which is perhaps something they weren't even expecting to have at this stage.
Yeah, Ike is running up. He just had a really, really good, easy win. So if he has any jitters, they should be worked out. He doesn't have to worry about being the last hope for his team. He does have Snute, the captain, behind him, and in theory, at least, the best player from Norway to back him up. And I don't know. There's just a lot of good things going for him. He should be in a pretty good place.
I think so. This is a really, really good position for Norway and, of course, Ike to be in. And let's see if he can take a PvP. It's going to be on Habitation Station. And, of course, it leaves the last remaining player for Team Poland, that being Mana, to carry the torch for the rest of this. He's got to win a PvP and a PvZ who wants to bring this back for his team here.
Habitation Station, the gold bases shouldn't matter too much in PvP, at least not early on. And by the time it gets later, you're more worried about gas units anyway. But the other thing that people overlook is this map has an absurdly short rush distance, and that certainly can matter in PvP.
That is very true indeed. So here we go, folks, to the northeast position. The last man standing here for Team Poland. In the red trunks playing Protoss, it is Mana. Versus his opponent to the northwest position. In the blue trunks playing Protoss, it is Carnage Ike.
I'm curious if Ike is capable of cheese or willing to cheese, because that was a very, very macro-oriented game he played in the last game. And even when he had a couple of opportunities to go for the kill, he instead opted to fall back, build another base, continue to tech and upgrade and whatnot. He didn't, like, you'll get cheesy players who are willing to do greedy builds. It didn't feel like that. That felt like a macro player playing a macro game.
Yes.
And that might not translate very well to PvP, and particularly on this map. Because like I said, everyone looks at this map and sees the gold base as the feature, the map. But the rush distance is actually just, like, absurdly short. And that could matter here, PvP. And Mana is completely capable of doing a 4-gate or just any kind of all-in. He's been around, he knows every build. He's very much so a build order-oriented player who can follow it up with a good macro game as well.
Yeah.
But from the absolute no knowledge of Ike that I have, I would say that Mana is the one who's a little bit more diverse and more able to adapt to a strange map like this.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And I would say that looking at Ike's control in that last game and having seen Mana's control in the hundreds of games previous to that, I'd say that Mana has an edge if it comes down to anything micro-orientated.
Yeah, Ike's battle control was not fantastic. There was definitely something to be desired from his class control. But to be fair, he could just attack, move, and still win easily. So maybe he wasn't, he wasn't completely focused on it, because it was very clear that he was winning those battles from the start. There was nothing he could have really done to lose them. So you can't quite fault him right off the bat for that. We have build orders starting to develop. Mana actually went for double gas immediately. Ike is going for a second gas as well, slightly delayed. Cybercore's around the same time, a little bit faster, obviously. Cybercore before second gas for Ike, a little bit quicker for him. No 4 gates this time, which is not surprising, but we did see one in the previous PvP.
Mana with the light probe harass, which generally doesn't get an awful lot done, but I don't know, he's working on that gas probe. He's actually doing all right. He almost, if he gets that, then I think we can safely say who has the better control here, but Ike is not going to allow that to happen. Mana darting in and out and seeing what he can do there, but he hangs around his opponent's base and is incredibly annoying, gets to sport all of the timings, gets to see what's going on there, and in the back of that, throws down that Twilight Council and is continuing to mine from both gas. In fact, he's so greedy for gas, he's putting a 4th probe in the extractor, so there we go. Oh, he's fixed it.
Yeah, that was even on the close extractor, and that was definitely a mistake. Sometimes you'll get extractors that are a little bit further away, and you really need 4 to mine them absolute efficiency, but
Not in this case.
No one actually does that. It's almost never worth it unless you have just like an absurd surplus of workers. Oh, a really early Nexus coming down from Ike here. This, so I guess he is just a greedy player through and through. But the Dark Shrine already coming up for mana. The Mothership Core is out on the map and kind of headed over towards the main from Ike. But man, of course, well aware of the potential of that. He has the Dark Shrine at the very back of his base. Should be able to deny scouting on that for sure.
Yeah, and Mana's going to be pretty happy with what he sees here. He sees a gateway and then a Robo, so not quite as early on that. Robo will be done by the time the Dark Shrine warping comes in, though, so we'll see. The thing is that if he warps in multiple Dark Templar and he doesn't manage to hold them at the natural ramp and those DTs start to split up, then that one Observer is not going to be enough to keep track of it. But we'll see. It might do damage. Dark Shrine is going to be up in about 30 in-game seconds time. Mana, however, does not actually have a pylon down to warp in with.
No, he doesn't. It's actually Ike who put down a forward pylon.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was preparation for later harassment, or if it was just mind games, hoping that Mana would think he was trying to be aggressive instead of taking just a very, very early second Nexus. Dark Shrine is finishing, but there's still... The forward pylon is just now starting for Mana. That's really badly timed.
It's not that close either. I mean, do you think that's deliberate for Mana? Could there be a reason for that based on what he scouted, or is that just a mistake?
No, that's just a mistake. Like, timing is absolutely of the essence. His warp gate has been finished. I don't know, his second and third gateway were kind of late, but again, I would just chalk that up to a mistake. If you're going to build like this, you need to be there. Because, look, the Observer is already out. So
yeah, Ike just scouts the Dark Shrine there with a Hallucinated Phoenix as well, so... Yeah, jig is up, I would think. Mana's trying to go in there and do something, and again, the force field of control of Ike, I would say kind of fails him, but he actually didn't have 2 force fields worth of energy, so he really didn't have too much of a choice there, but... Well, this DT aggression's pretty much over, and Mana's going straight into a Robo. He may be able to do some DT drop a little bit later, perhaps, but outside of that, that was something of a dismal failure.
Absolutely. The Nexus of Mana starts as the Nexus from Ike has already been finished for a good 30 seconds. They're on pretty much equal unit count. The Robo is much, much faster for Ike. He's already has Immortal production on the way. Mana doesn't really have much going for him. He already has a Twilight Council, but he's not researching Blink. He's not going to be able to make anything happen that way. This is not a particularly good Blink map. Not a whole lot of surface area to take advantage of. Actually, I don't know. Can you jump into the main from the gold base? It looks like you might be able to.
It is possible, actually.
Either way, that doesn't really matter because he's not going for it, so he's not going to be able to make anything happen there. Ike just headed up for... He's actually putting down cannons in his main, so he's being very, very safe. He's a little bit worried about that DT drop you mentioned. That's not going to be able to do anything. And he's headed straight up to Colossus, so he seems... This is kind of weird. Usually you don't see relatively unknown players being very, very macro-safe gameplay-oriented, but he seems to be kind of the epitome of that, if anything.
This is pretty impressive. Up to this point, honestly, he's doing a really good job, and it looks like he's read it perfectly. The DT drop is what's coming in here by the looks of it with the Warp Prism. He may decide to just go for a Zealot Warp in, but he wants to make that Dark Shrine work for him in some way, and so far it's done absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. With that cannon in the main, it's going to make it hard. It's going to make it hard for him to do anything else either.
Yeah.
The more production time he spends trying to make that Dark Shrine work, he's just falling further behind. He hasn't even started his Robo Bay yet, and the first Colossus is already out for Ike, and he's just matching the Immortal count now. That Warp Prism is headed in. He's warping in DTs, and so that's not even a Zealot Warp in. Zealot Warp in, obviously you're not investing too much, but DTs, that's just more and more gas gone. The cannon's already there. There's still an Observer with the army, so I don't see him making anything happen at all with this.
No, he's going to run right into that cannon, and he's able to do a little bit of damage. Wow. Jeez, talk about a little bit of overkill. I mean, that was US military level right there. Village just gets flattened by the mother of all bombs, a Colossus, a cannon, and a Photon Overcharge, saying absolutely not to that Dark Templar. So that is not happening whatsoever, and I think that Mana has very clearly realized at this point, this is not a good idea, and is now going into Templar Archives, which is a bit of an interesting choice, honestly. And if he wanted Archons, he could already warp in DTs for that.
I think he knows. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. He obviously knows he's not going to be able to catch up in Colossus count. He's not going to be able to play Colossus Wars and win that battle. So he is headed for Most likely, Archon Immortal Zealot kind of composition. He is getting Charge Lot going. He has upgrades coming. I believe the upgrades... No, he doesn't really have much of an advantage in terms of upgrades. He just doesn't have a whole lot going for him.
Mana drops 2 Immortals. I suppose you can't get it done with 1 DT. You can get it done with 2 Immortals, and he's focusing fire now on the pylons and is disabling some of this key tech, which is a pretty neat trick.
That's nice. It slows down the upgrade. It does give Mana a bit of an upgrade advantage because they were very close. Obviously, killing off that pylon is going to delay the +2 for Ike. He's continuing Immortal production, so he's going to have a lot of them to work with. And if he manages to drop them in and actually snipe some Colossus during the battle, that could work out well for him. Because without the Colossus, Ike's army will be significantly inferior to the Zealot, Templar, Archon kind of composition that Mana's going for. So maybe he's going to have that to work with, but he can't afford to spend Robo production time on another War Prism. He really needs all those Immortals out. So it's going to be very hard to actually engage if Ike's control is good. But that's the one thing we have actually seen Ike kind of fail at before. He has not had perfect control.
This is kind of cool. You've got to admit, what Mana's currently doing right now, knocking out pylons, trying to slow down production so he's able to catch up, using the Warp Prism and double Immortal drops to hold Ike back at his base. It's nice, and it is actually allowing Mana to start to get back into this. He even actually has a supply lead right now.
Yeah, I find that kind of surprising. He is going for a more mass unit kind of composition, so that it's more efficient supply on Ike's side. But really, given how much faster his expansion and everything was, and the failed tech on Mana's part, I'm surprised that's happening at all. But we do see more gateways coming up for Ike. It looks like he is gearing up for an attack. He has his own Temple Archive, so he can mix in his own Archons as well, which will help pretty significantly against the very Zealot-heavy composition Mana is aiming for. This is going to be kind of tough. That's a really scary Protoss ball coming out.
That is true. 5 Immortals, though, for Mana. So if he can actually focus down the Colossus, then he will actually be in a really good position there. The Archon should be able to handle the Zealots fairly well. And even if he adds something like Storm into that mix, that'll work pretty well, too. DTs being thrown in just for the hell of it. I assume those are being warped into morph to Archons, honestly. The Warp Prism is back. No, actually, he's warping a DT into the base, but another cannon was built to replace the one that went down, so that absolutely did not work out for him there. But this is going to be a really interesting engagement, and perhaps we might see Mana's control come into play, because like you said, Ike's not so great up to this point. That's really been his one weakness.
And Mana does have very, very good control. But it's just going to be so hard, because this is a very tight map. There's not a whole lot of room to maneuver. That makes the Colossus build infinitely better. It's going to be so hard to actually get the Immortals to engage on the Colossus. And Ike smartly warping, hallucinating in some additional Colossus just to help protect against that. That's a lot of Protoss stuff.
That very much is a lot of Protoss stuff on either side here, and currently the focus fire is not really managing to bring down those Colossus, and Ike barrels through that without too much of a problem. The remaining Immortals just run for the hills to the south of the map. That third base is looking pretty forfeit at this point, and it looks like we are, in fact, going to see the unknown Ike head through with a 2-kill against Poland, which is a very impressive result. GG, Mana is out. And, of course, that means that Poland falls to the losers bracket where they'll be facing off against Spain, and Norway takes a 3-1.
That was really impressive by Ike. Mana took that third base. He knew he was still a little bit behind. He had to make something happen to try and kind of come back. If he established that third base, gets himself an economic advantage, maybe he can work with that. Ike didn't panic. Just absolutely perfect timing. Exactly when the Nexus finished, which is exactly when you want to attack against something like that. He just goes in and completely obliterates Mana. Again, he didn't... not perfect unit control. He actually kind of attacked into a flank, but he didn't need it just because his timing and his macro and his build order choices were so good previously. Very impressive from him.
Yeah. That's... Well, there's your breakout performance right there on a big stage. That's good. I mean, that's probably the most viewers that he's had in a long... Well, ever. So, yeah, he can definitely be happy with that result. That was really, really nice. He plays a very greedy style that we don't... I mean, we see Protoss be greedy, especially with the Mothership Core, but that's like another level of greed from him. He really does push his tech really, really hard. He does a lot with very little, and then he makes a powerhouse selection of units. He seems to favor the Colossus, and that seems to work very, very well for him. So I am very impressed by Ike's performance there.
Protoss can be very greedy with the Mothership Core and still be pretty safe about it. But this was kind of next level stuff. If he starts to get more attention, get more known, he's going to have to tone that down a bit because the stuff he was doing definitely is punishable. But they're good calculated risks to take, especially when you're more of an unknown. Like if your opponent doesn't know that you're playing that kind of thing, it's risky to an extent, but you catch up so quickly because you are so greedy early on. It pays off, and then you have an advantage to work with. So really, really smart play from him. I'm curious to see because